What's up, YouTube? Gonti here. I know it's been a while since I've put out a video. I've been pretty busy with projects around the house and work, and just haven't had the time overall to do any of these videos. So the first video I'm gonna do as my first one back is a deck tech. This is a new series I'm gonna start. I'll probably do one for every deck that I play most frequently first, and then as I continue building decks, I will probably do one before I release a video on each, just to kind of give a heads up of what the deck does and the reasons why I chose to include certain cards of the deck. So without further ado, the first video we are going to do on a deck tech on, or I should say the first deck we will do a deck tech on, is Gonti, Lord of Luxury. This is probably one of my most favorite decks to play. Basically because it's a fun deck. So basically what this deck does is it's built specifically around Gonti, and more specifically his enter the battlefield trigger. So when he enters the battlefield, the top 4 of anyone's library, any opponent's library, pick one and exile it. And then as long as that card's exiled, you can play it for any mana cost, or any color of mana. So basically you're able to play cards out of your color identity, so you can play counter spells or whatever else you can find. And so basically the deck is centered around ETB effects. So a lot of the creatures, if not all of them, will have some sort of ETB effect that we can exploit, and the way we exploit it is through reanimation. Various spells like reanimate or animate dead, sort of cards like that, will allow us to bring them back from the graveyard, trigger their abilities again, and just kind of take advantage of those abilities. And the last thing this deck involves is just a tiny bit of combo. The combo is just Nim Deathmantle and Ashnod's Altar, make it infinite mana. And once you have infinite mana, there's a few cards you can use to close out the game, and we'll discuss that later on towards the end. So first thing we're going to do is look at the creatures. So we've got Cryptghast, Deemer Houseguard, Erebos, God of the Dead, and Faceless Butcher. So Cryptghast is, I guess, a mono black staple, I would call it, because whenever you tap a mana or swamp for mana, it essentially doubles the mana it produces. So especially if you have Urborgout, you tap a non-basic land for black mana, it'll still produce 2 black mana. So it's a pretty good card to have. We're not really a big mana deck, but it's good to have either way. Deemer Houseguard is just a tutor. The main tutor target it has is for Panharmonicon, which is especially important in this deck as it doubles all of our enter the battlefield triggers. We can also get removal of sorts, either a Faceless Butcher, Chupacabra, or even a Damnation. Erebos is in here for card draw. It also shuts off opponent's life gain. And then once you have enough devotion, it's an indestructible 5/7 creature, so it's pretty good. Faceless Butcher is here due to its enter the battlefield trigger of exiling a creature. So a lot of these removal that's in this deck is destroy effects, so this will get around indestructible. And obviously it leaves the battlefield trigger where it returns to the battlefield, but they're separate triggers. So when he enters, if you have a way to sacrifice him, his leaves the battlefield trigger will trigger first, return the creature to play, but since there was no creature exiled yet, nothing happens. And then the second ability, which is the first one, the exile one, will trigger exile on the creature permanently. It won't come back, which is, I think, a good thing to have. And then obviously we can repeatedly abuse this effect since it is an ETB effect. So we have Ravenous Chupacabra, which is another piece of removal, and then Solemn Simulacrum, which is land ramp, but also card draw when it dies. Vulture's Aven, more card draw, enter the battlefield trigger, so we can repeatedly use it by bringing it back or blinking it or whatever. Chainer, another reanimator card, 3 black, 3 life, put any creature in any graveyard into play. When he leaves play, all the nightmares get exiled. So any creature you bring back gets exiled unless you sacrifice each of those creatures first and then let Chainer leave. And then you can reuse them later on. Gray Merchant, that's one of our win conditions of the deck. Build up enough devotion, drain everybody. CDC is a tutor that is exploitable because of the enter the battlefield trigger. So she comes into play, exploits, sacrifices, tutor up a card, and repeat since it's a creature that we can recur. Demon Dark Schemes and Duplicate are also removal options. These two do not destroy, they either exile or decrease the toughness, so state-based effects kick in, and they will be put into the graveyard due to having 0 toughness. Enter the battlefield triggers, so we can double them up with Panorama, or we can repeat it with Conjurer's Closet. And then Demon of Dark Schemes also doubles as a recursion outlet. Allows us to bring back a creature card from our graveyard on the battlefield. And Grave Titan, obviously, enter the battlefield trigger. He's creates 2/2/2 zombies. You get 10 power across 3 bodies. It is also part of our infinite mana engine. We got Kokosho, the Evening Star, Massacre, Noxious Gearhulk, and Wormcoil engine. Kokosho is also a win condition with infinite mana. Massacre is more removal as well as Noxious Gearhulk. We can use them to double up on a trigger with Panorama, recur them from the graveyard to get another trigger. And Wormcoil engine is here not only for the lifelink, but it's also part of said engine for infinite mana, which we'll go over later. Abhorrent Overlord, Meteor Golem, and Ruin-Scarred Demon. Overlord, obviously, devotion, enters the battlefield trigger, part of our mana engine. Meteor Golem is a new addition to the deck. Mono Black has a tough time dealing with artifacts and enchantments. I used to run Gate to Phyrexia, but being that it is limited in its use, as in once per turn, only during your upkeep, it's hard to deal with multiple things at a time. Then I transfer to Nev's Disc and Oblivion Stone, but if we have a lot of our big combo pieces like Death Mantle, Altars, Panorama, and our Conjurer's Closet, it destroys them too, which is not good for us. We've only got one way of recurring it, artifacts, but it's hard to get unless you specifically tutor for it. So Meteor Golem fills that void of removing any kind of artifacts, enchantments, even planeswalkers, or any other problematic permanent that's not a land. It's enter the battlefield, so we can recur it, abuse it, whatever have you. And then Ruin-Scarred Demon is just another tutor on a stick, on legs, whatever you want to call it. And finally, Sandstone, Oracle, and Shieldred. Sandstone is a way to fill up our hand. While it's not great if our opponents don't have very many cards in hand, or if we have a mostly full grip, but to have the option, repeatable is nice. And then Shieldred is obviously reanimator, but also removal. And that's every turn, every upkeep, our opponent sacrifice creature, and every upkeep we get a creature back. So onto our artifacts, we've got our Mana Rocks, Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, Felwar Stone, Mind Stone. Just ways to help power out our bigger spells early on in the game. Jet Medallion, Ashnod's Altar, and Phyrexian Altar are also, I guess you can call them Mana Rocks. Jet Medallion is like a mass Mana Rock, to where instead of a one-use rock like Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, and the other ones, it reduces the cost of each black spell. So it spreads across all of our black spells per turn. And then Ashnod's Altar and Phyrexian Altar are both sack outlets in order to reuse our creatures. Ashnod's Altar is part of our mana engine. Phyrexian Altar, depending on which creature you use, you can also use it as part of the engine. Our other artifacts are Expedition Map, Nin, Death Mantle, Helm of the Host. Expedition Map will most likely usually find either Ancient Tomb, Urborg, or Cabal Coffers. Those are its main 3 targets. Sometimes Nykthos. Nim Death Mantle is obviously part of our engine. It recurs our creatures by paying 4 of any color of mana. And then Helm of the Host is another way to get more enter the battlefield triggers. And if you put on a legendary creature like Gonti, they're not legendary, the tokens aren't. So we can have multiple Gontis, which make great blockers since they have Death Touch. Panharmonicon, Conjurer's Closet, and Lifeline. These are the ways that we abuse our enter the battlefield triggers. Panharmonicon allows us to double our triggers. Closet allows us to exile a creature and bring it back so we can attack with it, exile it, bring it back as a blocker, get another trigger. Lifeline is a pet card of mine. I absolutely love this thing, especially with a sack outlet. I've had many fun games sacrificing a creature and bringing it back, and sacrificing a creature and bringing it back. And you can do that every turn to get multiple enter the battlefield triggers. It's a great card. The only downfall is it works for our opponent's creatures too, which is why we have certain exile effects. Like Faceless Butcher and Oblivion Strike. If there's something that we don't want them to have, we just get rid of it. Onto the sorceries, we got Reanimate, Beacon of Rest, and Live in Death. These are 3 of our Reanimator spells. Reanimate, we lose life equal to the casting cost. Beacon of Unrest allows us to bring back an artifact or a creature. So this is the one way that we can bring back our Panharmonicon, our Conjurer's Closet, our Lifeline. And then it gets shuffled back so we can reuse it again and again, as long as it doesn't get countered and it doesn't get exiled. And Live in Death is obviously, not only is it removal, but it's also it's recursion, but also it's removal. So we can get rid of problematic creatures on our opponents and bring back some of ours. Our removal package consists of Damnation, Mutilate, Oblivion Strike, Toxic Deluge. So Mutilate and Toxic Deluge gets around Indestructible and targeted removal. Oblivion Strike gets around destroy Indestructibles, but it also gets around anything that's like pro-black since it has Devoid, which is something that I've been considering lately, especially if we play against an Iona or something like that. We can still get rid of it because of the Devoid ability. Our card draw consists of Night's Whisper, Sign in Blood, Morbid Curiosity, and Read the Bones. Morbid Curiosity is a pretty good spell, so if we sacrifice Gonti, we get 4 cards. If we sacrifice Rune's Card Game, we get 7 cards, all for the price of 3. It doesn't matter what kind of creature we sacrifice, we're still going to get cards from it. And most of our creatures are 4+, so we're always going to get more than we pay for it. 2 of our tutors, Demonic Tutor and Diabolic Intent. Intent, again, sacrifices a creature, so we can reuse its enter the ability or enter the battlefield ability by bringing it back. Instants, these are our surprise reanimation spells. We play these either after we declare blockers, or if we want to have a sack outlet out and we want to just get another trigger, we can play this, sacrifice it, and it brings it back. These are nice little surprise during our opponent's turns. We've got Wake the Dead, Corpse Dance, and Makeshift Mannequin. More reanimation. Wake the Dead is... it's kind of iffy. It's bad that we can only activate it during combat on an opponent's turn, but we can bring back multiple creatures at a time. Corpse Dance, we obviously would have to have a sack outlet in order to make the best use out of it. You know, buy back every time, sacrifice a creature before it gets exiled. And Makeshift, when it becomes a target of spell or ability, you have to sacrifice it, so it's not that great, but it also is instant speed, so it can make for a surprise trigger and blocker. Our instant speed removal is Go for the Throat, Hero's Downfall, and Snuff Out. I chose these 3. Go for the Throat is cheap, Downfall can target planeswalkers, and Snuff Out can essentially be free by paying 4 life, so we don't have to leave mana open in order to cast it. And then we have, obviously, Run Vampiric Tutor, just as another tutor. Early on in the game, we usually go for fast mana, like Mana Rock or Soul Ring or whatever, but otherwise we just tutor up something that we can use, like Panharmonicon or Lifeline or Closet. Enchantments, we got Animate Dead and Necromancy. I chose these 2 as our enchantment reanimator just because Animate Dead is probably the best enchantment reanimator there is. And Necromancy is also, you can be playing it at instant speed for, again, surprise on our opponent's turn, but then you have to sacrifice it, which is okay. I opted not to run Dance of the Dead just because you have to pay mana to untap the creature that it brings back. So if we want to use it as attacker, we have to invest more mana. when that mana can be going towards something else. Card draw, Necropotence, and Phyrexian Arita, mono black, best continuous draw effects there is. And we run one planeswalker, which is Liliana of the Dark Realms. She is good for getting all of our swamps out, and if we can get her to her ultimate, we just got that much more mana. Each swamp will be 4 black mana each time we tap it, which is good for playing multiple spells per turn. Excuse me. Our lands, obviously, we run swamps. We run, I believe, 25 swamps. What we need for the deck. I mean, there's not really much to discuss about it. And we run quite a few swamps because we do run Stronghold and Coffers. So we want to make as much mana as we can. Again, Coffers, Stronghold, Deserted Temple, and Nykthos. These are all of our big mana lands, I guess. I include Deserted Temple in this group just because you can pay 1 to untap it and then retap them to make more mana. With Coffers, you need... Look like I didn't prepare this ahead of time, but I believe you need at least, I want to say you need 4 swamps, I believe, to make that produce extra mana, and Cabal Stronghold is 5 before it produces more mana than the lands you have. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like I said, I didn't pre-plan what I wanted to say, even though I probably should have to make it sound a little bit more professional. But I'm not a professional, this is just for fun, so blah. High Market, Phyrexian Tower, and Volar Stronghold. High Market and Phyrexian Tower are both sack outlets on lands, and then Volar Stronghold allows us to bring a creature back on top of our library to reuse again. Ancient Tomb obviously accelerates our playing our spells. Thespian Stage can copy any land. Urborg turns all of our lands into swamps for Cabal Coffers. And Arcane Lighthouse is a newer addition to the deck. We tend to fall hard to decks with Hexproof and Shroud in it, especially like Euro, the Miststalker. It's hard to deal with it when he has Shroud. So we wanted something in there to take care of that, and it takes up a land slot. It's not a big deal to have it in there. Now, with the recent changes, I guess this is probably a few months ago, they opted to basically reset the ban list. It's more or less the same multiplayer as it is 1v1, but there's just a few slight changes. So, Abnormal Endurance is kind of part of our surprise reanimation package, but it's not as good as the other one just because it costs 2 versus 1. So I opted to cut this in place of Recurrent Nightmare. So Recurrent Nightmare is 2 and a black, sacrifice a creature, return it to your hand, and put target creature from your graveyard into play. If we build a lot of mana, we can continuously swap creatures back and forth to get multiple triggers. And it just... I can understand why it's banned in multiplayer, but I wish it wasn't, because I would like to run this permanently. Every time I've played it, it's done amazing work. And it's probably my all-time favorite reanimation spell. Let's unban Recurrent Nightmare in multiplayer. So now, I know I talked about it quite a bit and didn't really delve into as much because I have a specific section for the combos. So it's, when I say combos, it's really one combo with multiple pieces. So first part, Name Death Mantle. We don't use it for its first ability, but for its second ability. So whenever a non-token creature is put into our graveyard from the battlefield, we can pay 4 and return that card to the battlefield and attach it, Name Death Mantle, to it. So this is what allows us to bring back our creatures. So in order for our creatures to come back, we need to get them in the graveyard. So what better way to get them in the graveyard than Ashnod's Altar? So we sacrifice a creature, add 2 colorless, which pays for half of Name Death Mantle. So in order to fully capitalize on that, we need to have a creature that makes at least 1 token. So if we make 1 token, we get our 4 mana, and we can bring back the token maker. But if we have a creature that makes more than 1 token, that's how we generate our infinite mana. Which means Abhorrent Overlord, at minimum, it'll make 2 tokens, so it'll be 3 bodies, so we can continue to make infinite mana. Grave Titan makes 2 bodies. Wormcoil Engine also makes 2 bodies, but only when it dies. So you have to sacrifice the Wormcoil Engine. Nim Deathmantle triggers. Wormcoil triggers. So Nim Deathmantle goes on the stack first, then Wormcoil. You make your 2 Worms tokens. Sacrifice both of them. Get our 4 mana plus the 2 from the original sacrifice of the Wormcoil Engine. There's your 6 mana. Bring back Wormcoil. Keep repeating. So what this does is not only does it make infinite harpies with Abhorrent, infinite zombies with Grave Titan, and infinite worms with Wormcoil, it also makes our infinite mana. Sacrifice all 3 creatures, you generate 2 extra mana each time. You sacrifice 1 token, and the token maker that pays for the Nim Deathmantle trigger, bring back the token maker, and you can make infinite tokens that way, if that's the route you choose to take. So, what do we do with our infinite mana? Obviously, if we have infinite creatures, we just turn them sideways and swing for lethal. But what can we do with the infinite mana? Do we just make infinite mana and be done with it? You can add in Exsanguinate, or you can do Torment of Hellfire if you want. That'll more or less, that could be your win conditions of the deck, but we don't use those. We rely on our enter the battlefield creatures to, or just creatures in general, to win our games. So, Gonti. Make infinite mana, you keep sacrificing and bring them back. You keep exiling everybody's library. Exile each card, 1 by 1 by 1 by 1, until all their libraries are empty, and you pass the turn, and each of them loses as soon as they try to draw. You add Kokosho, you drain everybody. Sacrifice it, they lose 5 life, bring it back. Sacrifice it, they lose 5 life, bring it back. You obviously gain life, but that doesn't matter, as you don't win by having a lot of life. You win by everybody else having none. And Grey Merchant, like I said earlier. Even if he's the only creature you have on the battlefield, it's 2 life each time. You just keep back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And you keep draining your opponents that way. So those are the win conditions of the deck. So, again, this is my first deck tech, so I apologize if I missed something or if my speech and talking wasn't all the best. Obviously, this is the first time I'm doing this, so hopefully the more that I do, the more comfortable I get with it, and the more I can put out videos, and obviously more gameplay videos. So I wanted to have a platform to announce when I have a video in case you guys don't get notifications on your phone. So I set up a Facebook page, Gaming with Gonti. Go ahead and search it up, like it. Every time I open up upload a video, I'll put a link there. Or if we get a good following, I can start having conversations with people on there. And the same with Twitter, @GamingGuerte. Go ahead, follow me there. Follow me on Facebook. Like and subscribe videos. The whole shebang. And hopefully I can continue putting out videos and build my subscribers and build my video base and hopefully put out some good videos for you guys. So anyways, like, comment, rate, subscribe, share with your friends, do whatever. Let's get this going. Thanks. Have a good night. Bye.